So I'm Karen Baase. I'm the dairy and livestock educator here in Madison County. And we've got a good group here to start in investigating at least an ongoing dilemma in the dairy industry has been hoof care health. And I remember 23 years ago when I first started, I think back in 1993, we had a program over at Bruce Barnes on Route 20. Maybe some of you know that farm. And we had a couple of local hoof trimmers come in, and that's when the hoof dilemma was just kind of showing its head. And I think it's kind of grown ever since then. So that's why we're bringing on board some experts who have a long time experience in the field and can do the kinds of diagnosis that you folks on campus here do on a daily basis. And so our guest speaker is Jerry Bertoldo. He's a veterinarian from the Northwest New York Dairy and Livestock and Field Crops team. Covers what, 10 counties, 11 counties? 10 counties. And so we're fortunate to have him here with us. And in addition to him, we have a huge contingent of professional hoof trimmers that are part of the national organization that's based out of Montana. And correct me if I get your names wrong. We got Chip and Eric and Kyle and Richard Weingart, who came from Vermont, is that correct?
Close, I'm in Connecticut.
Oh, okay. Well, you came from quite a distance here just to come to Morrisville for this program. So anyway, without further ado, I also want to thank Sean Bossert for helping us put this program to get together and for hosting it. And my colleague Mary Lynn Collins from Oneida County Cooperative Extension, who is helping us, and Andrew Damon, our IT technologist, that is recording this for us. So this is a first. So we're kind of doing this on the fly, and we'll be able to see the college's brand new vertical tilt table or vertical table for trimming hooves. We'll see that.
Help you with the terminology.
Okay, okay. I need to get up to speed. It's a shoot, right? You're right. Okay. So I guess with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jerry.
Thanks, Karen. Glad to be here today. Karen reached out a while back to see if I'd come on out and do something with, talk about hoof trimming and treatments and that sort of thing, and I knew it was kind of out of my league. As a veterinarian, I think I'd lifted up enough lame cow feet and such, but I haven't done that in quite some time, and certainly not adept at trimming in a chute with a grinder and that sort of thing. So we've really appreciate the Hoof Trimmer Association folks that are here today. They've helped us out with our programming out in Western New York quite a bit. So it's really good to see these folks take this interest. Lameness is a big dollar loss in the dairy industry. It ranks number 2, number 3, depending on who you're talking to, as far as economic devastation. A lot of estimates on how much a lame cow costs you in your herd. Some people will say as low as $120, and some have looked at it and said it's well over $400. So some estimates say that it's going to cost you over $100 per cow in your herd, every cow in the herd, for putting up with lameness in the herd during the year. So a lot of dollar value, loss in production, reproduction, higher cull rates, and that sort of thing. So we don't want to spend too much time in a classroom setting today because we want to really be outside looking at cows. We're going to do some locomotion scoring, get some of those cows that we looked at that are known problems visually, to put them in the chute and have them trimmed to see what we actually find. Because one of the big issues in lameness and the arguments, discussion that goes on is which cows really need to be trimmed. I mean, for years ago, we only really looked at cows that you could visually see that were lame. So when they started to trigger with a little head nod or a short stride or kind of holding the foot up a little bit, that was the time to put them, lift their foot up, put them on a table or whatever. Information that's been around for quite some time shows that that's way too late. That's closing the door after the horses got out of the barn. So we really want to promote to folks that preventative trimming, maintenance trimming is really the way to go. And that may vary in your herd. You may be able to do that in a really ideal situation. It may be close to a year interval. Some herds, it may be every 5 months that a cow needs to be put on a table and have a maintenance trim. So you'd be surprised how many things you find on the bottom of a foot on a cow that on a visual locomotion scoring does not really click any boxes and say, yep, oh yeah, she's lame, we got to look at her. She may walk pretty well. We put her on that table, you can find some interesting things going on. So we had a PowerPoint presentation here, just doing it real short. This is abbreviated lots from the hoof health module that we did here just a month or two back. But lameness is primarily in the feet on cows, well over 90% of it. And if you take a look at foot lameness, 90% of that is the hind end of the cow, and 90% of that is on the outside claw. So if you were Jimmy the Greek and betting in Las Vegas, which claw on a cow would you actually nominate to be the problem without even looking at the cow? It'd be the hind foot on the outside, right? That's where 85% of that problem in that cow is going to be. Front feet do not present nearly as big a problem. We do have a heifer with some overgrown front feet, and there is a cow out there that's got some front foot issues that we're going to look at today. So I thought it'd be all hind feet today, but it won't. Now, the interesting thing is when you take a look at the weight distribution on a cow, 60% of her weight is on the front end. So if you're doing a regular weight-bearing thing and what part of the cow is taking the big load, you'd say, well, it's got to be the front feet going to be the problem, right? Well, it isn't. We only got 10% of the problems in the front, 90 behind. So why is the one that takes the weight-bearing the least of a problem? One more. Well, the answer is in the way that front leg is put together. With the way the shoulder blade is attached to the basic spinal structure of the cow, there's a lot more of a shock absorber effect on the front end than in the hind end. So the concussion on the front when the cow puts her foot down is less there than it is in the back. It has something to do with muscles and tendons as well. If we take a look at the dynamics, and balance is a real big thing in cows, and this is why preventative trimming is so important, because it's not necessarily the ouchies in her foot and the white line separation or the abscess that's forming or the sole ulcer that's there that we really should be looking at primarily. We should be looking at why this cow isn't traveling well and putting her feet down evenly and such. Here's ideal cow on the left, and you can see it on the bottom. There's numbers 50, 50, 50, 4 times across on the one on the left, meaning if she had 200 pounds of weight, as an example, being distributed between all 4 claws behind, if she's perfectly balanced, trimmed well, and she doesn't have anything going on mechanically or have anything wrong with those inside the claw, you're going to have that even distribution. If you take and tip her weight over because she's got an ouchy foot somewhere, the weight distribution changes dramatically. Say she's got a problem in the outside claw on that left hind foot, where the number that indicates how much weight, it says 32. She's going to put double that or better on that outside claw on the other hind foot. So you can see that we have weight distribution issues, and if you got one that's sore, you're going to push weight onto the other and cause issues there down the road. So when we look at trimming cows and the way they go and the way they stand, do we have poor conformation or do we have bad trimming? So we can have both. I mean, cows don't all have nice straight hind legs. They do toe out and such, conformationally not as correct as we'd like. But you can take a cow that's pretty straight normally, the way she's put together, not trim her for a while, get her outside hind claw, gets really extra heel, extra sole, and whatever. She can't stand flat anymore because the outside tends to grow more than the inside. So to compensate, she's got to spread her legs out and do this kind of cow-hocked, toed out kind of situation to make that work for her. So on the ideal foot, and we're going to show this out on the table here, here's different parts to take a look at. The red area is really kind of indicating the maximum weight-bearing area on that foot, and I'm sure the hoof guys here could kind of argue that that's kind of a small area there, and maybe this cow was trimmed more like a horse where you dished out too much of the foot and put majority of weight on the walls rather than distributed over the sole some more. That's true, yes. If she's on a nice soft grassy surface and such, she doesn't need to distribute that weight as evenly as she would, or flat on the bottom as a concrete surface, because on a softer surface it's going to naturally balance that weight bearing in that claw. A lot of times we talk about what's going on in a cow's foot, but lots of folks really don't have an idea of all that stuff we talk about, that P3 or the coffin bone in the foot or different pressure points or where the hoof really grows, that the laminar corium, the thing that actually, the section that actually makes the wall from the inside and such. So just a few things to take a look at here. We've got the sole down on the bottom here, and one thing I'd like to point out is these things that end in C, these corium spots, periopial corium and the laminar corium, sole, and over in the heel. These are really the growth points in the foot. So if we have some abnormality the way this foot grows due to mechanical problems, just because of bad surfaces, cows aren't trimmed correctly, we've got rough concrete, or on the nutritional side, we've blamed the nutritionist for years that laminitis that's a ration deal. You screwed up my ration, da-da-da-da. We haven't thought about heat, TMR mixing, slug feeding, hand feeding in conventional barns, or quality, right. So we do have all sorts of things that can affect this here. So we're not going to talk at length today about that, though. One thing I want you to show, see these stars that are on the bottom side of that P3 bone? Those are areas that create pressure points depending on how thick that sole is or what the angle of the foot may be, or in the case of laminitis where we actually have a disruption in the way this bone is attached to this corium out here. This is where this toe can drop, or the bone can drop, and we make a pressure point and have a toe ulcer. If we have an issue over here where we've got an imbalance or too much pressure towards the heel, this little spot there is kind of a little prominence on the bottom of that bone. It'll push right down through. There's a fatty pad in there called digital cushion, and it'll actually start to push on that sole and work its way through. And that's where we get heel ulcers from. Next. One of the other spots that's of real interest is what's called the white line. And here, this little dotted deal here shows you on this hoof right here, probably an outside claw. And this little bit of these fingers that go between the inside part of the sole and actually up further inside the wall are really delicate little deals. If we have a problem with a feed issue, rumen acidosis, or some other mechanical traumas, we can have these little fingers kind of break away, become kind of soft in that area, and allow a separation for gravel and dirt and manure to go up in there, and we can lead to this white line disease, which we'll show some other pictures of a little bit later. If you take a look at the back of a cow's foot, and here's one that's not quite balanced, so we have an outside claw here, inside claw. This area, the colored area, indicates the digital cushion that we talked about. It's a fatty pad. This is a natural shock absorber in the bovine foot. For heifers, first lactation heifers, this can be a real issue. Their digital pad, the amount of fat in there is really not as developed as an older cow. And any of these cows that go through body condition loss will lose this fatty pad before they lose a lot of their back fat. So this is a big issue which we didn't know anything about for years, why fresh heifers in particular were more prone to these laminitis type symptoms with sole ulcers and all sorts of other ouchies that went on with their feet and such. But other things we have to look at here with this imbalance in this claw, this should be more at an angle like this. This is overgrown, lots more hoof on the outside. We have a tendency for this foot overgrows on the toe as well. It's putting pressure back. Remember I had that one star that was on that diagram? Here's what happens. This is this prominence point here that pushes down. So if we've got a fresh heifer, her digital cushion is depleted because she's losing body condition. She hasn't been trimmed very well. She's kind of back on her heels some. We got this pressure point, and it's going to try to push right down through the bottom of that sole. This animal is going to be plenty sore and may very well develop a heel ulcer. Oh, just back on that again. This right here is an indication of a white line issue. Remember we talked about those little finger type things on the other slide? This is where that becomes soft, allowing material to go up on inside of it. These do not start as an infectious process, but because of they open up and allow some material to get jammed up in there, they do eventually turn into possibly an abscess. A lot of times they'll blow out the coronary band. If you have horses or know about horses, it's called a gravel when that blows out the top of the coronary band. This might be that foot that we're looking at. Imbalanced, lots of heel. Maybe we've got some separation here, kind of a little bulgy looking there. We've got some eaten away activity on that inside claw and such. You could find a whole passel of things going on in that in those claws when she's trimmed. We have to keep in mind growth rate. Hooves don't really grow too awful fast. They're kind of like, in a way, like trees. They grow on a periodic basis and such. And we'll look at some pictures that indicate kind of the history of growth patterns by looking at the wall. So growth rate, look at this. We only have about a 1/4 inch per month from the wall side of things, and on the sole even less than that. And when we look at how much sole thickness that we have, we go from a very low, that's a really low level there, about a 1/5 of an inch to less than 1/2 of an inch at the toe, and towards the heel we expect it to be a little bit thicker. So the object of trimming, which you'll see demonstrated today, is to do exactly what we see here. You got the abnormal on the top, and you have what the objective is on the bottom, with lines of force being shown to indicate where problems can develop if you don't balance these girls out. The things, next slide. And what we'll see today will probably be just a little tip of the iceberg of what is out there and you can observe. We have non-infectious and infectious causes of hoof disease. Overgrown, deformed feet, sole ulcers, and white line disease all begin as a non-infectious process. The way they end up can be very infectious and such, but in the beginning they have nothing to do with the environment and bacteria and that sort of thing. Thin soles, new barn disease, rough concrete and such, and problems with ouchy hemorrhagic soles are non-infectious. The foot rots, the hairy heel warts or interdigital dermatitis, which are kind of related, and heel erosions can be related to infectious process, and the bugs in the environment can be the primary thing that's going on there, not something that comes in later on. Laminitis is a wide term. We have a lot of things we talked about here that go under the umbrella of laminitis. It's not just one particular entity, but it can be metabolic, related to like feed and feed delivery, or it can be mechanical because your cows are on their feet for 15 hours a day instead of 12 hours a day, and they're not balanced correctly, so they got lots of different pressure points on their feet. So I think we got a heifer out that we're going to see that looks not quite like that, but long and a bit curly toes. Next one. So the nutritional side, put this together because this laminitis and feed, a lot of stuff goes in here. It's not just that your guy gave you a crappy ration to put on your cows. It's how you put that together. Is your mixer, if you got a TMR mixer wagon, are you overloading that thing? No mixer wagon hardly delivers properly mixed feed if you go over 80% of its design capacity. Probably the dealer didn't tell you that, did he? So when you're putting 2x8s on the top of your mixer wagon so you can get an extra 800 pounds, 1,000 pounds in there, guess what? You've taken something that's not too good at 100% and made it even worse at 110%. 10%. So there's all sorts of things that go in there. These buckle, claw, fever rings, hardship lines, another laminitic sign. You see these kind of things on animals. That means you've had some disruption in the way that that foot has grown. And that disruption represents itself by like growth rings on a tree. White line disease we talked about. Next one. But this is what it can wind up being when it goes too far. Wall has to be removed because you get an abscess underneath, and it's got to be opened up to let that get air. Put some topical dressing on it, let it heal. Bruised sole hemorrhages. You can have environmental things, stone, too thin a sole from trimming too close, or you can have hemorrhages deep in a foot that are a result of a laminitis event and maybe rumen acidosis. Toe ulcers we talked about before, and the heel ulcers. There's the classic deal right there. This little rosebud of nasty red granulation tissue, and if they get advanced, it's the kind of thing you squeeze that heel and you get that toothpaste out of there. Guess what? When you hit the toothpaste phase, probably the truck needs to be considered as a cure for this girl. Heel ulcerations, we talked about that before, and the location, and double soles that can be related to nutritional insults as well, and just some more pictures of that. Foot rot. Foot rot is, man, when I was first out of vet school, foot rot was like it. We had super foot rot in the 1980s that went from normal foot to something that looked like, in like 24 hours. We don't see those things anymore. They've like gone away. I think part of that's due to the immune system. Selenium is a lot higher in our rations, and we tend to treat cows better as far as the ration. We don't have nearly as much as the subacute acidosis going on because of ration things that aren't exactly right. Very few people feed a 55% grain, 45% forage diet anymore, mostly because of money, but we've realized that really doesn't push production as well as you thought it did. Heel warts, digital dermatitis, those nasty little things with the little spiky fingers and hairs on them that if you look at them cross-eyed, the cow would like to kick you. They hurt so badly. Heel erosions, we may see some of that, can be related, higher correlation with heel warts. And that is it.